Hello and welcome to Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us. This week, a wide-ranging interview with Mississippi Congressman Bennie Thompson, the 2nd District Congressman, discusses the January 6th committee, the FBI search for classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, and closer to home, infrastructure needs. Thompson suggests the city of Jackson is not doing all it can to fund its water system repairs. We'll have the mayor of Jackson's response to that, and we'll hear from HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge, focusing on affordable housing needs in Mississippi and beyond. It's all ahead on another busy Sunday on Mississippi Insight. It was Secretary Fudge's visit to the capital city that set the stage for our interview with Thompson. Both were in Jackson to examine housing needs in the Congressman's 2nd District. But there's always much more to discuss with Mississippi's sole Democratic Congressman.
First, this is your reaction to Liz Cheney's loss in her primary yesterday. What does that mean for her? What's that say about Donald Trump's handle on the Republican Party?
Well, obviously it means Donald Trump has a heavy hand on the party. Congresswoman Cheney is a great patriot. Her loss in that election is not just a loss for Wyoming, but it's a loss for this country as a whole. She comes from a very prominent political family in this country. And you know, for the most part, she and I have had our differences down through the years in terms of votes. But I never questioned her loyalty to this country. I never questioned her patriotism for supporting this government and the right of people to have the ability to speak their opinion. And so she's my vice chair on the select committee and an active participant in it. I look forward to her coming back when we reconvene in September to continue that work.
She said in her concession speech that her fight continues to keep Donald Trump out of the White House.
Well, you know, she's very passionate about it. She thinks that what happened on January 6th was a travesty for this country. I share her passion for it because normally in America, we settle our differences at the ballot box. What we saw at the nation's capital was an embarrassment, was a stain on our founding fathers' design for what democracy ought to be about. So you can only understand it if she, like I and others, happened to have been in Washington on that day, and we saw what occurred, and people's lives were put in danger. And again, this went all over the world. It was embarrassing, but it was also dangerous that in what has been the greatest democracy in the world, for all of a sudden, it to be overrun by people who somehow thought the election should have gone in another direction.
What's next with the January 6th committee? What's going to happen in the fall when you guys reconvene, and what do we expect to see?
Well, I think you see more of what you've seen in the previous hearings. As you notice, people have not refuted the facts that we've presented. Clearly, Donald Trump knew that he had lost the election. He had been told by a number of people that he had lost the election, but he refused to say it. And because he refused to say it, we're in this mess we're in now. So we'll continue to tell the story. We'll show the facts and circumstances that occurred and brought about January 6th. But at the end of the day, anybody that has an opposing view and willing to come before the committee under oath, we welcome them to come.
What do you hope comes out of the January 6th committee? What's the end result or the end game here?
Well, the end game, obviously, first is to document for Congress what actually occurred, why it occurred, look at the facts and circumstances that made it happen, and then make recommendations so that we can, if those recommendations are adopted, this will never happen again. You know, we've been the shining star on the hill as a government that gave us bragging rights all around the world. And now, what happened on January 6th got us looking like, a ragtag country that can't even elect its own leadership in peace. And that's not who we are as a country.
What do you say about the raid that happened at Mar-a-Lago and what's going on with the FBI right now?
Well, clearly I support the FBI. I mean, they're doing their job. They gathered the facts and evidence, presented it to a judge, and the judge made the ultimate decision based on the facts presented that a search warrant would be issued. So I support the men and women of the FBI. Now, if former President Trump and others differ, then they will have that day in court, like every other individual who's charged with something. And then he can prove whether or not they got the information out of Mar-a-Lago, whether or not he was told before they came that they were interested in certain information. From what I gather, they were told that we didn't have the information. And so the public has a right to know, but the FBI has a job to do. It doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. When you break the law, you have to suffer the consequences. And Donald Trump is not above the law.
Should the affidavit be unsealed?
Well, you know, the affidavit is a responsibility of the court to make a decision. Normally, the FBI doesn't share affidavits. So this is a special situation. If they choose to do so, that's fine. If they choose not to, that means you'll see it eventually in court, if there are charges that are brought from the information received from Mar-a-Lago. So, you know, Donald Trump has gone from, they raided my house, that they put things in the boxes, and we've systematically seen everything that he's said to be untrue. And so I figure between now and if this goes to court or there's an indictment made to go to court, Donald Trump will lie again. He's notorious for not telling the truth. And here's somebody, mind you, that was president of the United States. If you can't believe the president of the United States, who can you believe?
What's the deadline to complete the investigation for the January 6th committee?
Well, we sunset the end of December. So our report, as well as any other hearings or anything that we will produce, will have to be done by that.
We'll have more with Bennie Thompson, including his thoughts on Jackson's chronic water problems, and we'll hear from Secretary Marcia Fudge. Mississippi Insight continues. Before we continue our interview with Congressman Thompson, we want to look at what brought him to the capital city last week. It was the kickoff of the HUD on the Road tour by Housing and Urban Development Secretary Marcia Fudge. She visited an affordable housing project and met with leaders to discuss housing issues in Mississippi. 12 News' Richard Lake has more on the Secretary's visit.
HUD Secretary Marcia Fudge kicked off her day in the North Jackson neighborhood of Broadmoor. An ongoing Habitat for Humanity Mississippi Capital Area project, the Broadmoor Initiative is an affordable housing plan focused on refurbishing homes from the 1950s. Approximately 100 homes are planned to be renovated by 2024. Projects like the Broadmoor Initiative are exactly why Secretary Fudge decided to start her tour in the Magnolia State.
All of us know that housing in this country has become so difficult, whether you purchase or whether you rent. Most people cannot today afford a reasonable home. I don't care what state or what county you live in. This is an example of what can happen when everybody works together. I'm proud that HUD has been a participant in this.
According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, 32% of renter households in Mississippi are extremely low income. Mississippi also has a shortage of over 48,000 rental homes, affordable and available for low-income renters. How the state has handled these issues also drew Secretary Fudge to Jackson.
Well, I started it here for a couple of reasons. One is because I know that you all are doing the right thing. That's number one. Number two, because I know that there have been some difficulties in this community over the years, but still you do the right thing. Jackson is a place that people sometimes write off. We're here to make sure that people recognize that good things are happening here.
Secretary Fudge continued her day meeting with faith and financial leaders about how they can help alleviate the housing crisis in Mississippi. Reporting in Jackson, Richard Lake, 12 News.
Housing issues and other kitchen table economics will certainly be in focus this November as Congressman Thompson runs for re-election. He's seen as likely to win his race, but he and his fellow Democrats will be hard-pressed to maintain control of the U.S. House against Republicans. Here's more of our conversation recorded Wednesday.
The Democrats passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and the president signed it the other day. What does that mean moving forward?
Well, I'm happy to be one of the Democrats who supported it. Obviously, no Republican supported it. It means that from an economy standpoint, as you know, everything's moving toward a green economy. The incentives provided in that legislation will help us preserve and protect our environment earlier, but also there are some benefits for those individuals who have dependence on insulin and other high-cost drugs. We have to support a lot of these things that are in that package. So I believe that going forward, we have to be environmentally conscious and friendly. So if we're going toward a system of electric vehicles, incentives to do solar and wind and other forms of energy, we should do it because we see difference in weather patterns happening all over the world. The Antarctica is melting. We have more wildfires, we have more floods occurring. So all that's part of climate change. So this legislation will help us address many of those documented climate changes that are occurring.
Talk about the midterms. It looked like in the beginning that Democrats were going to take a beating in the midterms. What does it look like now as far as will you lose the House, or do you have a chance of winning the House, and do you have a chance of hanging on to the Senate?
Well, I think we have chances to hanging on to the Senate and keeping the House. It requires work. It requires getting our message out. Democrats document that they care about people. We have the HUD Secretary here in Mississippi today, the capital city more specifically, showing and sharing the information on what those programs will mean to the capital city and areas around. So getting the message out, showing that we care about people, whether it's housing, whether it's health care, whether it's the environment, whether it's transportation, whether it's access to the internet, all those things have come about because of democratic programs. How we responded to COVID-19 pandemic, all the incentives associated with making sure that you can get access to a test, make sure you can get the shots and the boosters. All those came because Democrats stepped up, provided the leadership and investment to make it happen.
Let's talk about the water crisis that Jackson is constantly in. Do you believe that the city is doing everything it can to leverage federal dollars to get help for the city of Jackson?
Well, I think it'd be advantageous for the city to come up with a plan and share that plan with as many potential sources of help as possible. I know there's a water problem with the city of Jackson, but nobody has shared the facts on the problem with me as one of the representatives, as well as what the cure or the plan for correcting it. So as soon as that occurs, I think people will readily roll up their sleeves and do it. But the city fathers and mothers will have to step up, produce that plan that we can begin to sail from Jackson to Washington. I think just saying we need help and not saying what that help entails is where the problem lies.
And so why is that? Why is that not happening? I mean, because they keep saying they're going to Washington asking for help, but you're saying there's no roadmap. Is that what they're lacking, or what's the problem?
Well, my experience in Washington is that communities that need help develop a roadmap so that if we invest in the product, then there's a significant expectation that that product will be successful. But when we don't see the plan for that investment, there's a reluctance to invest on it. So I encourage the city of Jackson to develop that plan. You know, there are concerns with EPA There are concerns with the State Board of Health. And so I think whatever plan that's developed has addressed those documented issues associated with the problem. And I think help will come over time. But you have to present the written plan, give people time to work with them. But at the worst time is when you're in the middle of a crisis and you're not able to come up with a plan. So my encouragement to the city of Jackson, develop this plan as quick as you can and start selling it to anybody who potentially will be able to provide help.
Why do you think they haven't done that already? Or have you guys talked to the city of Jackson, said this is what you need to do? Have you spelled it out to them?
Well, I think the conversations have occurred over time saying you need to come up with a plan. Now, I think they are trying to pull that together, but you know, when you're in the midst of a boil water crisis and you don't have enough staff to maintain your system, it's difficult. But again, that difficulty still has to include a plan. So I encourage everyone at the city to produce the plan and say, here's the steps that we plan to take to get our water system back to an acceptable standard. You can't just say we need money. You have to say, if we had this money, here are the steps based on the plan that we have adopted will entail. I think that gives confidence to anybody who would give money that once that money is given, that it will actually be spent for that purpose.
Does this plan need to go to the entire congressional delegation?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know, now we have more money right now in the federal treasury than we've ever had. But any of that money can only be accessed with a plan. So I encourage people to come with the plan. So whether you're going to HUD or EPA or any other federal agencies that provide monies for this is what you do.
Is the state doing what they can to help with the infrastructure in the city of Jackson?
Well, look, the money the state's offering is the money we sent to Mississippi from Washington. So if the state really want to help, put some state money in the game. Don't take the money that people sent from Washington to the state and then say, oh, we're going to offer you this money. Offer some other monies in addition to the federal money, and then you're really helping.
How concerned are you about where Jackson is right now with their infrastructure issues? And this week we had restaurants complaining about their concerns and they're saying, hey, we may not re-sign our 5-year leases.
Well, look, it's economic. It's economic. Everywhere I've been in the city, the water situation has been on the tip of the tongues of every citizen. They are saying, it's gone on too long. They're saying, I'm having to buy bottled water and still pay a water bill. I mean, those are the conversations you hear. And then you go to restaurants and they have picked up this burden of having to purchase water just to serve meals and their customers. And so that is a problem. People are reluctant to stay in hotels right now because the restaurant might not be open, or there's some other. So there are some health considerations that absolutely have to be addressed. Now, I understand the council is looking at establishing a process by which they might have to hire somebody to run the water system. Well, if that's a plan, let's get on with it. But you can't just not come up with a plan and try to convince people that we're working on the solution. Come forth with the plan and let's see what benefits come from it. But I'm convinced at the federal level that if you come with a plan that passed basic muster, we'll work with local government. We're happy to do it. But we can't come in and run any water system. We can help those operators run their current system. That's just not how the federal government operates. We help all the time.
We asked Jackson Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba for his response to Thompson's comments. The mayor sent us this statement saying, quote, "It's possible that Congressman Thompson, while protecting our democracy by holding the January 6th insurrection hearings, is simply not up to date with our frequent engagement with the leadership of several U.S. agencies and departments or the multiple requests of our lobbyists to meet with him. We look forward to sharing our fully outlined plan, and one that is supported by the expert advice of the U.S. Water Alliance and the Kellogg Foundation," end quote. When 12 News asked for a copy of that plan, we were told to submit a public records request. That's exactly what we've done, and we look forward to sharing any such document with you as soon as we get it. Big thanks to Congressman Bennie Thompson for talking with us this week. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown. From all of us here at 12 News, make it a great weekend.